Madison, you just got back from seeing the eclipse, right?
Yeah, no, I was gone for a week. I drove from Salt Lake down to Texas over the course of 6 days to go see the eclipse in totality.
I heard it was a little foggy down in Texas. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it was partly cloudy where we were, and so we did get lucky because the clouds were moving pretty quickly through the sky, and so while one cloud would overtake the sun and just give it a couple minutes and it'll be gone, and the clouds were pretty wispy as well, and so you could see the sun through the clouds even with the eclipse glasses on because it's still so freaking bright. So we got lucky. We saw probably 90 seconds worth of totality out of,
Wow.
we were in the dead center of the path of totality. So like if there weren't any clouds, we probably would have gotten somewhere around 4 minutes of totality, but we got 90 seconds and it's transcendent. It's amazing.
Yeah. A lot of cultures, in a lot of cultures, it's bad to stare at the eclipse at all. But have you felt like your luck has changed since then?
Honestly, I don't know. I was like, I think the only bad thing is that if you looked at even a partial eclipse with your eyes, that would really hurt you. And that wouldn't be good. So I understand why you wouldn't want to look at the sun, even 99% eclipsed. But I really hope that my luck is improved. I need a lot of luck in my life.
I'm just going to chalk it up to astrologers, philosophers, and scientists of old just didn't have eclipse glasses. The bad luck
They just
was you
didn't-
no longer
yeah.
have good eyesight.
Your bad luck is you're blind now.
Yep. Which is watching the Google search results as soon as the eclipse passed through, there were a good amount of Americans who are now partially blinded.
Yeah. That's really silly.
Yep. Well, when you got back, did you catch up on our favorite show?
Yeah, I did. I think I only missed one episode while I was gone. And so I know, let's see, what are we, as of now, we're on episode 9, but I know we need to talk about 7, 8, and 9.
And I think by the time this podcast comes out, the 10th will have just dropped the night before.
Oh,
so
boy.
Everyone, listen to this recap first and then go watch number 10. But Leah, let's kick it off. I took a bunch of notes. Episode 7, titled A Stick of Time, takes us back in time to young Toranaga winning his first battle and slicing off the head of his enemy. Off screen, though, right?
Yeah.
Because we find out later it wasn't such a nice wrapped up story as we thought at first.
Yeah.
Basic plot of this episode, we have Toranaga going to his brother, Lord Saeki, 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 I am going to butcher it. They try to bring him into the fight, but Ishido already got there. We have the owner of the Willow Wind Brothel Tea House visiting Toranaga, and it's under a stick of time. So until a stick of incense burns is how they would measure time with a lord to go and sit and talk. A cool measurement. I wouldn't mind that these days with phone calls with grandparents or family. You got one incense stick. You better quicken it up. And she does hint a little bit at the fact that a spy could have told Toranaga about the approaching army of Ishido and his brother, and that there are some spies and some bad actors within his group. And so we do see Toranaga kind of becoming a little more reserved this episode with his next moves in his plot.
Yeah, this episode basically is very Toranaga focused on what he's doing, what his motivations are, and you're right, they do become obscured, even more obscured than they already have been at the end, because basically Toranaga is trying to get his brother to join him to do their Crimson Sky attack on Osaka, but then his brother is like, actually, I actually took your seat on the council, and you have to surrender to me by tomorrow, or else you're gonna die. So it's like, you surrender to me now or die, basically. And much of the episode, or actually, I think it's the next episode, but much of the episode is spent with Toranaga's men, like basically trying to convince him to plan this, to plan that, different kinds of violence, which includes Toranaga's son. Because Toranaga's son is like, oh my gosh, I wish I could have seen my dad in his heyday when he was this child prodigy. And turns out that a lot of people are projecting onto Toranaga this like really refined image.
Yeah.
When Toranaga as a child, when he had to execute this man, did not do a very good job and had to hack someone's head off.
9 times. It said 9 swings to hack the head off.
That is really something. And it's probably good that they didn't show that, but it's good storytelling also to let your characters discover that in real time. But you can get a sense that Toranaga is like, especially in his conversation with the brothel leader, he's kind of tired.
Yeah.
I don't think he's like, he wants to do war anymore. I don't think he wants to do violence. And yet everyone around him is just offering him plans of violence and blood. And he's just like, let's try and find a way with less blood.
Yeah, and to your point, every turn this episode, someone is asking for his approval for blood. We have Buntaro, who hops in on like a little fun sparring match between Yabushige and Blackthorn, and he suddenly puts a blade to Blackthorn's throat, and Blackthorn's like, go ahead, you might as well kill me. And then Buntaro shows up at Toranaga's camp, and he's like, can I please kill Anjin? No. And then you have Mariko showing up, just delivering an absolute emotional ripper of a line in which she says, waiting for death is like a river of anguish. Please just kill her and let it end. And Toranaga slaps the blade away. He's like, once again, why are you making me the executioner? What is happening here? And he says something that I really love there, which is where he says, even when there is evil in the land, no one should tear the realm apart. Which is really interesting, especially with our current political climate. The idea of violence as a way of ousting evil isn't always the answer, because it just creates more violence, more evil, more violence, more evil, which of course leads them to surrender.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can tell a lot of the show so far feels like there's a lot of young men who are desperate to prove themselves and to like attain honorific titles and to just do great things. And one of these is Toranaga's son. And so at the end of the episode, after Toranaga is like, I'm just going to surrender. Like, this isn't worth it anymore. Toranaga's son and a band of fellows leads a sneak attack on Toranaga's brother to try and kill him. And whereas earlier in the episode, Toranaga's son was like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful death it would be. There'd be so much beauty in the death to like give my life to something so great.
Yeah.
Toranaga's son slips on a rock and cracks his head open and bleeds out in the middle of a pond. And Toranaga's brother, Saiki, says, what beauty is there in this?
Yeah.
And then the episode ends. And it's just like, wow, truly, what beauty is there in that?
Yeah, it's really doing a good job of promoting nonviolence each step of the way. It was frustrating for me for a moment because I was like, wait a second, a little too convenient, slips on a rock. But then again, this is what happened. And in general, there were these moments of just like bad fate or bad timing or just the wrong pair of shoes. Anyway, and it takes us into the next episode 8, The Abyss of Life, and opens with Yabushige, who's just now one of my favorite characters. He was good from the start, but he's just great. And he's ranking Nagakato's death, Toranaga's son, where he says to his stenographer, let's put that in the book. I hadn't even thought about slipping on a rock and dying. So we're going to put slipping on a rock and dying lower than boiling to death, but higher than eaten by dogs.
Oh my gosh.
And just the matter of factness of it all is like, it's a funeral procession. He's like 20 feet in front. Just timing. Never too soon.
Yeah. You can just tell that some of these guys have just seen so much death that like the heaviness of it is just, is present for them. Like it's been alluded to over the entire series. It's the eightfold fence. It's the houses that can be repaired on a whim. There's just so much destruction all the time, so much death and destruction all the time that you have to like hold the world at a remove, or else it's just going to be too much for you. And it's obviously what Yabushige is doing.
Yeah, we have the Nagakado funeral pyre, and right afterwards, Yabushige is stirred up, and he's like, you know what? Eff it. Let's go storm the city. So it's crazy to think of, to your point, the body is not even charred down to be fertilizer, and he's already like, let's just go kill some more people. Let's make it right. Just a different culture than we've been used to for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So this episode is a lot of time is spent with Toranaga's men trying to convince him to not surrender and to just like do the Crimson Sky thing.
Yeah.
I'll need to like watch this series again after it's concluded and like try and binge it so that I can follow the some of the honorific aspects of the story, because honor compels people to do things that frankly I would think are insane.
Yeah.
But inside of the logic of the culture, it's like it's like a character. Honor is itself is a character in the story, and it's driving people to like argue with Toranaga about surrendering and wanting to like die themselves. And it's a lot of Toranaga just being like, no, like leave me, let me just do this. And you can sense that maybe he's got a different plan underneath everything, but it's still pretty unclear.
Yeah, we have a lot of different factions still here. We have the priest, Father Martin Alvito, who shows up and he's trying to play his own game here, saying, hey, Toranaga, I bet you and Ochiba can be buddies again. Then we've got Ochiba getting proposed to by Ishido in just the most boring and governmental of moments. We have Toda Hiromatsu, who we see more of, one of Toranaga's oldest advisors and friends, and they're going at it and having full arguments. There's just so much going on in this episode that, to your point, would be nicer to watch it all in one binge to understand here's where his character arc goes, here's where his goes, because it is a big, wide cast of characters. And there are sweet moments between multiple characters and different people. Everything from, in this episode, we have Mariko and Buntaro have a sweet moment, followed by a really rough one where Buntaro's like, hey, tonight, let's both kill ourselves. And Mariko's like, what? You would misunderstand me. I'd sooner live 1,000 years than die with you like this.
It was really hard. I remember being like, oh, Buntaro, I didn't like you, but that was hard. That was a hard thing for you to experience.
I was like, talk about not knowing how to read the room. It's the man who's like, what's going to make my wife happy on our anniversary? And he takes her to a Cleveland Browns game when she does not like football.
He gets her a bowling ball.
He gets her a bowling ball. He's like, guess what? I bought you a tractor. Why? Nothing against tractor loving women, but for those who don't, it just felt like it was more for him than it was for her.
I bought you a Ford Raptor with just like loaded up to the nines. Yeah.
I bought you a gun. Let's go shooting, honey. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have Blackthorn in this episode trying to pick up his boys. And this was honestly one of the more satisfying scenes.
It was.
To realize how much he had changed, and he's nothing like those scoundrels. Calling after women, drinking all the sake, being angry about the clothing he's wearing, wanting to completely ditch the mission. So he just like knocks one guy flat and then leaves. And I love that's the wrap up we get. The one thing he's wanted the whole entire series, and now he's like, ah, shit.
I thought it was really well done because, like, I'm pretty sure he asked to go see his men, and then someone questions him on his clothing. He like, do you want to go see your men wearing that? And he's like, of course I do.
Yep.
And then, like there is, maybe an elegance or a refinement that is gone through Blackthorn's system, that now he doesn't see himself as belonging to his own crew, to his own people. And what a place to be in where you don't belong anymore, anywhere. You don't belong anywhere. You don't belong with the Japanese people. You don't belong with your own people because you're now somewhere in between them. And what a tragedy in some ways.
And we kind of see it in Blackthorn afterwards, the sadness, followed by directly showing up at Yabushige's, just saying, let bygones be bygones. I want to pledge my allegiance to you, fly under your flag, take the ship and cannons, and let's go kick some ass. And Yabushige says, no, not a chance. And we have this interesting moment where Blackthorn takes off the sword from his hilt, from his waistband, and lays it out in front of him and says, this is not my sword, which is completely wrong culturally. You don't do that, honor or
Yeah.
otherwise. And he says, this feels weird. It feels funny me even wearing it, but then follows it up by saying, but now I feel like a stranger to my own people, so I'm going to cut my own fate. That's just how it's going to go, which was powerful, although it doesn't get received in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's going according to Toranaga's plan. This
Once
man is
again,
playing five-dimensional chess, and he knows what everyone's going to do before they do it and as they do it. Like it's like he's God.
yeah, I love the satisfying moments when you realize, like, I thought someone had a one up on him, but once again, he's got it right. The father gets his land, and it's neighboring with the courtesans. So his
Yeah.
land for the church is going to be right next to the whorehouse. Sorry, the willow house. It's beautiful. We have Hiramatsu and Toranaga in front of the whole council having a shouting match in which Hiramatsu says, so you do believe in pointless death if you would rather me commit seppuku than us go fight in Osaka? And Toranaga
Yeah.
says, do it. And he does. And of course, crazy that he has his son, Buntaro, come to be the second, so that as he pushes the blade in, his son will be the one to chop his head off. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. And this is the one of the moments where again, I need to binge the show when it's done so that
Yeah.
I understand exactly what is happening here. Because there seems to be such an intention on like making things look a certain way so that people perceive things happening in a certain way. And honor is used as a tool to get there because I think Toranaga was like my men wouldn't go do something unless like they thought that I was serious about surrendering. Is that
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. I sat there and I was like, oh, he is playing 5D chess. If he asked his people to go to war in an unwinnable battle, there would be
Mm-hmm.
resentment and worry and whatever else. If he has his best friend and spiritual mentor commit suicide in front of him because we will not surrender alongside you, and Toranaga's like, I'm stuck. I got to surrender. What else can I do? Then everyone's so mad they're going to defy him just to get him out of there. It puts a different weight behind it. It's fully their
Yeah.
decision. It's not an order from him. There's a difference there.
Yeah. Even though he's certainly manipulating them.
Yes, yes, he definitely is.
We get a nice little wrap up at the end of Toranaga being like, this is what Yabushige needs in order to turn his back on me and go with Blackthorn to go take the cannons and go drive towards Osaka. And then he's like, with Mariko, he's like, are you ready to do the thing that you've been wanting to do your entire life, which is to use your life to take vengeance? And Mariko's like, I'm ready.
Which was crazily impactful, tearful, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that moment, Toranaga calls Blackthorn and Yabushige Goshocks. And I was like, what is a Goshok? It's a Eurasian hawk that's eats pheasants and little things. It's like a little tiny short-winged raptor, if you will, but considered a true hawk. But he talks down about them to Mariko, which is true. They're short winged, short sighted. They're just ready to be bulldogs. Where he's like, we need a little more tact here to get this done right. Which is great to see that's what Mariko's role is going to be. That he's already
Yeah.
had a plan. Again, who knows for how long? If that's why he had her married to Buntaro, who knows? If he was just playing the longest of long games. But yeah, pretty intense. We have at the end Ochiba accepting Ishido's hand in marriage. We're supposed to believe, at least. Doesn't seem like much of a marriage ceremony, but yeah.
All in all, a good episode. Oh, and like he's also mourning the death of his son.
Yeah, so he has been living on borrowed time because there is a pause for peace while he's mourning his dead son.
Yeah.
So they can't attack yet. He won't be sacrificed. Also, Anjin Blackthorn has just been a giant distraction the whole season's worth of time. So things have to come together quickly now because there's not much more time left before he has to finally submit to the council.
Yeah.
Before we go to episode 9, can I share some seppuku fun facts?
Yes, please.
They're not fun, but here we go.
As fun as they can be.
Okay, so seppuku we've seen in TV movies. I always had thought it was just more exaggerated in film and television. I'm like, oh, it couldn't have happened that often. No, it happened that often. We have stories from Brits and Portuguese people watching fights with all these samurais and giant battles, where at the end of a lost battle, 400 plus in one battle, 900 plus in another, all committed seppuku at the same time. Like,
Yeah.
no prisoner of war, no going home defeated. It was on the battlefield we lost. We're all doing it right now. It really informs the honor culture and what led us to World War II and that whole issue of the emperor and kamikaze and all the rest of it. Seppuku was outlawed multiple times. 1603, I want to say, 1666. By 1873, when they did more trade with the West and were a little more open, it was outlawed as judicial punishment. So you could no longer be forced to do seppuku by a judge, but voluntary seppuku still took place. World War II, you have generals and soldiers doing it all the time rather than being captured, especially as the war was nearing its end in 1945. The last known official case in the media was actually 1970, which is way too recent.
Yeah.
A prominent nationalist Japanese writer, Yukio Mishima, committed seppuku in the office of a military general. And his second, because the person committing seppuku and the second has the katana to slice their head off. His second could not get his head off. So
Oh
after
my
3
gosh.
hacks, they have a kendo master named Koga who steps in and whacks it off in a final blow.
Holy
But I
cow.
just have to say, the mentality of a people to be like, this is acceptable and voluntary is insane. Something I don't
Yeah.
understand.
Did you see Godzilla -1?
Yes.
I think we talked about it, but it really like informs that story too of someone who was a kamikaze pilot, didn't do it, and then is living under the shame for a long time because he didn't have the courage to die.
Yeah.
And then basically the question is, how are you going to live now? And that phrase undergirds Hayao Miyazaki's work. You can just see it everywhere in Japanese media. Is just like, how are you going to live?
Yeah. It's interesting because I think in Western culture, for those who didn't volunteer to go in World War II or who weren't drafted, there was a level of, I guess, shame or otherwise of, oh, what were you doing? Were you in school? Why weren't you there with everybody else? Why didn't you die like everybody else? But not to the same level in any way. It just is so much crazier, such a very different culture and expectation,
Yeah.
which is a perfect segue to episode 9, Crimson Sky. It's happening. It's going down soon.
For an episode titled Crimson Skies, with everything that we've heard about Crimson Skies,
Yeah.
this was a pretty contemplative episode.
Yeah, they really, once again, they pulled a fast one on us, like
Yeah.
Toranaga, because I was like, oh, here we go. We're attacking the capital. And yes, to your point, not so. We start with a flashback of Mariko in a wintry wasteland, and then she gets rescued or taken in by the priest. A really interesting echoey version of the Lord's Prayer as it pulls in close on her. Great cinematography. Great. The DP was just masterfully doing that shot. And then we have, you know,
Nobushige.
on his way to Osaka with everybody else and his wonderful poetic statement, I hate this city. Beautifully put. We have everyone entering the castle, becoming momentary prisoners, and the showdown between Mariko and her will versus Ishido, the other regents, and the mother to the heir, Uchiba.
Yeah. See, much of this episode comes down to this contest of wills between Mariko and Ishido. And I think I probably like on some level understood that everyone was prisoners there.
Yeah.
But again, this is one of those instances where the 5-dimensional workings of the plot with amongst all the characters, I don't think I understood quite as much that like the importance of the need to demonstrate that these people are being held captive.
get to prove that they really are prisoners if you're not allowed to leave. And would 20 men stop one woman from leaving because you really are prisoners?
Yeah.
We have a little moment with Mariko and her son, who's either a little brainwashed or otherwise. He pleading with her to
Hmm.
stay. We have Mariko defying Ishido in front of the entire court, saying
Hmm.
she's of samurai lineage of over 1,000 years, and she will not be confined anywhere, no matter what.
And it's just so interesting. Before she did this, she like pleads with Blackthorn, be like, please don't interrupt this from happening. Just like let this happen. And during this scene, Blackthorn is up on the court, but he's up above the courtyard looking down, and he just looks like he's so casual, just like
Yeah.
watching this thing happen. Like he's actually just he's taken Mariko's word and he said, okay, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to watch what happens. And he does it. He doesn't like that's part of Blackthorn's growth is that Blackthorn from episode 1 or 2 would have like jumped down there and gotten himself killed. But this is a time where he takes his orders and he just does it.
Yeah, and I love at a certain point where Mariko turns to the other regents and says, you know, tell the soldiers to let me pass. And all the other regents, honestly, they're just a bunch of whiners saying, we can't do it. We can't disobey. And then she
Mm-hmm.
says, we are all prisoners then. I must obey my lord. I must march out.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that when they finally bring her back and she turns back to all the women saying, we can't leave, it's not just we can't leave, it's we can't leave and I'm going to commit seppuku by sunset. Hey, bestie, you're about to be the reason I'm dead. Thanks.
Yeah.
I love that she puts it back. Yeah, puts it back on the air, back on Ochiba.
Yeah. And I'm not sure. No, there's another finally a good moment between Mariko and Blackthorn here where to begin with the heir wants to have an audience with Blackthorn and Blackthorn's Japanese is coming along. Like I just am assuming that he's picking up most of what people are saying at this point. But the heir Ochiba brings Mariko in to translate again, and she doesn't do a lot of translating. And it's more Mariko's like, this is just an excuse for her to have an audience with me. And they exchange some words and exchange some poetry, and then Mariko's just like, we need to leave Blackthorn. And then they just like, he just like literally turns and leaves without a second
I
word.
loved it.
Yeah. Like not even a bow. Like the camera didn't even acknowledge his motion. He just like in the background, you just see his figure just like leave.
Uh-huh.
And then Mariko like starts to leave and then like turns and says the final thing to Lady Ochiba. And then they go.
And that final thing is so poetic. Flowers are only flowers because they fall. The whole idea
Mm,
of death is not a defeat.
mm.
It's what contextualizes the life. It's what contextualizes our existence. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
We see before the episode ends, yeah, Yabushige just being himself, which again Toranaga knew. He knew what he was getting himself into, and he accepts Ishido's trade. You let the ninjas in to kill everybody, and now you will not be killed. Your service will be your payment. Blackthorn and Mariko are they're eye fucking each other, and it's just such a scene. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the tension here is intense. And then they start kissing, and off screen, but we get it.
Yeah. We already got it once, but it was less intentional then. And this time is like, no, this time feels like this is the main course. Like finally our
The
characters
main
get to
course.
love each other.
Which was great, right before the ninjas come in, and they're together when they're getting attacked, and Blackthorn saving her, she's saving him, stab, stab, shot, shot, until the final scene.
So sad. They get into basically like a shed to try and blockade themselves off. And then they start hearing like, oh, these guys are going to blast the door with like dynamite or explosives. And they're all like, then we're all dead because the is just going to tear through this shed. And so Blackthorn, who just doesn't want to admit defeat at all, who doesn't want to accept death, is like trying to blockade the door and he's trying to get Yabushige to help him. And I don't think Yabushige wants to because the whole point, his whole thing
Yeah.
was he let the ninjas in. And Mariko is just like really serene and she's just like, Anjin, you need to accept what's going to happen. And then she goes and stands in front of the door to use her body as a shield.
Crazy.
And then the explosion happens and she just blasts towards the camera, and that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, her last words were pretty much, "This is the inciting incident. This is what you needed. Now we go to war. Tell the Lord I've died by assassination. This is what we needed." Yeah. Talk about a sacrifice and making good on her own promise. Death is not a loss. And you know what? Sometimes in the service of your Lord, if that's what it takes, Toranaga knew she had to probably die in order for this to happen. Okay, no holds barred. We're going to see what happens episode 10, but it's sounding like Scorched Earth or Scorched Osaka.
Yeah, it is. And it was honestly, a little sad bummer because Mariko's seppuku was interrupted earlier in the episode by Ishido issuing her a permit to leave. Yeah. And it was like, oh, good, we don't have to watch her kill herself. And Anjin, Blackthorn doesn't have to be her second. What a part of the episode, right?
Where, I know. Yep.
Like, she's just like, I'm ready to die. And she asks someone to be her second, and the person isn't there. And then there's just this silence pervading the room. And it's just like, I guess I'm just going to die and suffer. And then Anjin steps up and he's like, I will do it. I'll be your second. And it's just like, no, please, no.
Not beheading his lover.
No, yeah. And so then she steps in at the last moment before she puts the knife to her heart and stops her and issues her the permit. And then all the ladies there are like, I want to go. I want to leave too. And he's like, apply for a permit and then you can. And so it's a demonstration of Ishido's, maybe not impotence, but his will caved before Mariko's did. And then that happens before Mariko and Blackthorn have their final night together. But then to have Mariko sacrifice herself for something real and not for just like a political move, I think gave her sacrifice more potency.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Watching the entire series, I'm like, oh, Toranaga's going to give her the kingdom. She's going to be the shogun. She's going to be the leader. To have this happen was really gut-wrenching.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That would have been so cool to have her be the shogun.
The whole time I'm like, oh, she's the wise one. She's also a warrior. She's so stoic. She has the eightfold path, but also this exterior influence from Blackthorn. Oh, this is going to be great. And then she takes the cannon blast.
I don't know. Maybe she's not dead.
You're right.
Maybe she's not dead.
Samurai like Jedi have come back from lots before.
Yeah, they've come back from worse.
Episode 10 coming out next week, or by the time this comes out, came out yesterday. Give it a watch. For all those who have not seen Shōgun yet, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Just watch the show. It's out.
Yeah.
Get to it.
Yeah.
Until next week, when we're going to have our final little bit on Shōgun episode 10, as well as a recap of what we've been watching. We hope everyone watches good shows and watches good movies. We'll have more to discuss then, and keep watching good things.